encapsulated in your flowchart, actually, something that I read from Mises, who wrote Human Action like 1949. All government spending and all government action is a misallocation of capital.
Yes.
Because you have stolen from consumers via taxation and inflation to fund things that no one wanted.
Yes.
Right? You've used coercion to redirect resources that no one asked you to do that.
So in the free market, you have efficient capital allocators, and they rise to the top in the free market.
Right.
Because the more efficient you are at allocating capital, the more capital you accumulate, and it becomes a self-reinforcing reinforcing thing. It's like an evolutionary
skin in the game.
Yeah. Outcome of a free market. It's almost laughable to say that the government thinks it can drive growth by taking capital out of the hands of efficient capital allocators and allocating it inefficiently. But by definition, that is just wrong.
Yeah.
It is just wrong.
Yeah.
And when you think about it like that, the amount of capital the government should be allocating should be as close to zero as possible.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I find it very hard to argue against that, other than on some sort of abstracted moral basis.
Yeah,
that draws an equivalence between the actions of the free market and negative impacts for the social aspects of society, which again I think is tenuous and used from typically what we see in politics is used more from like a misdirection or some previously held grievance of some nature against another set of people.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, if you put more and more capital back in the hands of efficient capital allocators, the quality of life will go up for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
It will. And we've seen this over the last couple of 100 years.
Right.
I mean, the US in the 1800s, just the most incredible boom.
Yeah.
There was, almost no such thing as taxes,
right.
At that point in time. But, we've corroded to such a point now where, 50% tax is viewed as like normal.
It's crazy.
Or, more in some instances, certainly on a marginal rate in the UK, or again from the UK, when you reach certain arbitrary thresholds and then your tax allowance disappears instantly, and then effectively you're working for the government for an extra X amount until you can hit another bracket. It is just interference. It's just interference. And to think that this is having a positive impact on society is deluded.
Yes.
Absolutely deluded. And it is a separate issue from the big red button, because the big red button allows you to play that game indefinitely,
right?
Until you have some massive consequence.
So you hyperinflate, right?
But it doesn't remove your ability to do that temporarily. It just means that you need to do it
explicitly.
You need to do it explicitly, and you also need to do it in a sufficiently efficient way, is that it doesn't blow up quickly.
Right.
Because you're going to get voted out if you're taking too much tax from people, or you are overextended and then you cause economic distress to the population because of asset price depreciation, because you don't have the ability to bail yourself out. So the free market has to correct. The public feel the pain. They vote you out. You get that feedback loop much, much faster when you don't have the big red button. Right. But you still have the ability of the ruling government to make those changes.
Yes.
They just find out very quickly whether it works or not.
This is why that it is so important to keep a generalized field of ignorance about how money works and money printing works and how the big red button works, right? Because if you keep people ignorant about that, then you can extend all of these schemes via the money printing versus having to send people these explicit tax bills. Like, one of my favorite examples of this is the US war on terror, right? We printed, I think it's in the neighborhood of $2.5 trillion over a 20-year period to fund the war on terror. We printed like 2.8 and we spent 2.5 on the war on terror, right? So it was all printed money. Had we not had the money printer or the big red button to fund that 20-year military excursion, it came out to like an $80,000 tax bill per U.S. household. So you could imagine the resistance that people would have had they received an $80,000 bill from Uncle Sam saying, hey, we're killing people on the other side of the world, and this is your fair share of the bill.
Yeah. People
would have been in the streets. It would have been over in the first year, right? It would have been over. But because you can money print and you can sort of externalize the consequences in this ephemeral way, and then you can blame the inflation on supply chains and greedy capitalists and all these other things, and people don't know, like people don't get it. So they're like, oh yeah, Joe Biden's on the Super Bowl commercial telling me ice cream's more expensive because of the greedy ice cream producer. Okay, like if you don't understand how money printing works, then you're just gonna believe that bullshit.
Yeah.
And so it seems, again, there's this weird, pernicious problem where it's like once you start printing the money and you start conditioning people to believe that it's all these other causes, why life's getting harder, that you need to keep doubling down on that ignorance, and you start debasing people intellectually, their character, their moral, all these things. And I don't know, it seems like one of these problems you could just like scream about till you're blue in the face, but somehow it's there, it's plain for all to see, but somehow hidden in plain sight at the same time.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on something there. You feel like you want to scream at the system, but it doesn't do any good.
Right.
It doesn't do any good, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners go on that journey, and I certainly have as well, where you start figuring out how it works, and then you get angry about it. And then you start complaining about everything. And then, but it's a phase.
Yeah.
You come out the other end, either side of that, and say, like, most of the people don't know any better because they haven't figured it out. Right. So they're just playing the game by the rules they understand, which have naturally occurred given the corruption of the system. And your ability to influence these things is close to zero, unless you're prepared to go into politics and try and get to the top table. But
unlikely you're going to fix the root problem even in politics.
But even
almost certainly you're not going to be able to fix it.
Well, that's I'll come back to that in a second. But even getting to the top table without compromising yourself,
right,
is almost impossible.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say you could do it, and then you're faced with being in the hot seat. Right? You've now got to take the big red button away.
Yeah.
Right. It takes a very brave person to do that.
Yes.
Very brave, because there's going to be short-term pain.
Yeah. Extreme.
And to come back to your point earlier, you said it made me think about Argentina, in that people don't vote for the pain, but they do when it's already so painful.
Right. Yeah.
And we have this slow decline, but it's so gradual in every aspect of our lives that nobody's up in arms about it to such an extent that you would vote for the pain.
Sure.
We're still at the stage of this team can fix it or that team can fix it.
Yeah. Which is
the gap between that and Argentina. I mean, how long was Argentina in socialism for? 60 years, 70 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. It takes a long time to reach boiling point.
Right.
And so when you then think about the impact that you can have, well, you can either fight against this, or you can just try and do it another way. You try and help people make the same leap that you've made. Because we can either fight the system or we can defund the system.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And if you defund the system's going to collapse sooner. And it's a unilateral set of actions. Every individual can make that choice.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I don't mean defund the system as in don't pay your tax or something like that. I mean,
just move purchasing power into Bitcoin and out of fiat.
Yeah. And it's in your small actions every day.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.